Our oldest son joined the Air Force. I tried to talk him out of it. In fact, I asked all of our children, don't join the military. Your dad has done enough. You don't have to do this, but they wanted to. So when our oldest son joined the Air Force, it was right in the middle of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I said to my wife, Dawn, listen, you put me on an airplane and you've sent me overseas a lot of times not knowing if I'm going to come back. But this is different. This is your son. And although he's in the Air Force, there's no guarantee that he won't go to combat, and there's no guarantee that if he goes, that he will come back alive. Are you ready for that? And I'll never forget her answer. She said, of course I don't know that. Of course we don't know if he's ever going to go, and we have no idea if he goes, if he'll make it back. There are no guarantees, and I understand that full well. I love my son, but I love my country. And if that's what it takes to keep this country free, then our family will give it. When our middle son joined the Army, joined the Ranger Regiment, went off to Afghanistan with the Ranger Regiment, this was really, really hard on my wife and I. And what was hard on me is I didn't want him to have to go fight my war. It's okay if the U.S. sends him somewhere else, but I didn't want him to go off to the war that we didn't get a chance to finish. It really disappointed me that I didn't get a chance to wrap up Iraq and Afghanistan in my career. Having been to 5 different wars on 3 continents, 17 deployments, I was disappointed that my son had to go to the same place that I had gone to, and it still wasn't over. But my wife was one of his biggest supporters, and she has always said, listen, if this is what it costs to keep our country free, why should our family have to pay less than somebody else's family? And I think she's right. If somebody is going to have to give a son or a husband or a father, then I pray to God that nobody has to give up a spouse or a child or a parent. But if it has to happen, why should my family be exempt if that's what it takes to keep our country free?
Well, it's definitely more difficult when your child is deploying. I mean, obviously when you're deploying, your head's in the game. Even if you have family, you know that it's important to focus on, doing the best you can and getting ready in the best way you can, and your soldiers as well. And my husband, same, watching him go through that as well. But when it's your child, it's definitely more challenging for a parent to watch. You have to trust that they're doing, they're getting themselves ready as well. And I know, like with my daughter and my son in the past, I know that they are very professional in their trade, and they take it seriously. I know I've listened to my daughter talk on the phone about the training she does and the things she does to try to better herself as an aviator, and it's impressive to me. So it really helps me wrap my head around a deployment for her.
Now you have grown children,
Yeah.
and they have decided to take a military career, and they are deploying. How do you handle that?
Yeah, that situation is probably the hardest as far as an old soldier is concerned, because I'll back the story up to when my son had surgery when he was 2 years old. He just had a cyst in his eye. I mean, it was no big deal. But I would rather go through 10 times the amount of pain in the world than to have my kids suffer at all. And so my son deploying, and now my daughter's deployed twice, and she's getting ready to go out again. Very, very tough situation for her dad and mom, but it's very tough for me because you just want them to do well, obviously, but then you obviously worry about their demise. And as a father, you worry about that anyways, but when they get into combat, there's a lot of unknowns that happens that sometimes you can't control. So it's very, very tough.
Did you ever think that your kids would go on to serve, and kind of your thoughts?
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. I was surprised. We obviously didn't want to persuade our kids in any way, and knowing how they grew up and the hardships that they had with their father and myself at one time being gone, I didn't really consider that was going to be an option for them. But they both kind of gravitated toward the military lifestyle, at least initially, and and that's what they've chosen. So yeah, it's very surprising to see them both do that. Matter of fact, for my daughter, she went to West Point for her first summer, and we actually put a down payment on an alternate school just in case she changed her mind. Maybe partially I was kind of thinking she might, but she came out of her summer training and loving it. So that's where the story ends, I guess,
That's awesome.
or starts.